Okay, welcome everyone. This is Chris Madrid French. I'm the Executive Director of Napa County Landmarks, and welcome to our webinar today. We are so excited today to welcome Susan Heiken. And Susan, I'll ask you to put your video on.
Okay. There we go.
Welcome. How are
Thank
you?
Good. How are you?
Great. Go
Okay.
ahead and share your screen.
Thank you, Christine, for that nice introduction. My name is Susan Heiken. I'm with Studio 1515, and today the purpose of the webinar is to provide you with an overview of historic and cultural landscapes in our county. And the intent is to be an introductory presentation for you to give you some language and some framework as you're seeing and thinking about our landscape resources throughout the valley. A little bit more about me and my company. We're a small landscape architecture firm. We're in downtown Napa on 4th Street, behind Nations and next to community projects. We're a team of 5. We have 2 licensed landscape architects, including myself, and 3 very talented support staff that do all of our graphics and drafting and things like that. We offer a broad range of services from conceptual landscape designs, site master plans, working drawings. We are very skilled with MWELO compliance, which is a state water conservation ordinance. It doesn't apply to all landscape projects, but if you are getting a building permit and you're over 500 square feet of new landscape, that does come into play. We've done a lot of fire rebuilds, fire-wise landscapes. I am also a certified access specialist. That's a credential that's administered by the state of California regarding accessibility building code. And between Rachel Brinkerhoff, my other landscape architect, and myself, we have about 50 years collective experience all throughout the Bay Area. We've done a wide range of projects, pretty much anything that you can imagine. And that's all right there for you to see. As a CASp, I also have done some work in the Valley with our historic architectural resources and accessibility compliance. So that is another thing that we offer that's unique to our firm. For the purpose of this presentation, as I was thinking about how to organize my thoughts around this, I wanted to give a little background in how we define and evaluate landscape resources. And this goes back to the 1980s. The National Park Service undertook the task of coming up with 4 categories to organize landscape cultural resources. Since they're not architectural, finite built things, they're a little harder to wrap your head around and get clear definitions of. And the reason we need to do this is so that when developments are happening or when agencies want to understand the value of what they have, they need a way to define what they're looking at. And so they came up with these 4 categories that are pretty loosely defined, and any one resource can overlap in several categories. So there's historic sites, vernacular landscapes, ethnographic landscapes, and designed landscapes. And then that got further simplified into designed or vernacular. And designed, pretty self-explanatory, being anything that was consciously created by humans. Vernacular is a broad umbrella, but basically any landscape resource that has developed or evolved through function or use. And the 3 main agencies that you'll see this language being used in are National Park Service, Office of Historic Preservation, and in California, Caltrans. There is a national nonprofit organization called the Cultural Landscape Foundation. This was the website that I went to as my go-to to develop this framework. I'm going to show you more about it on the next slide. But this is really an amazing organization, and they do a lot of advocacy for preservation, identification, restoration of landscape cultural resources. And they also have an amazing website and database. So here's a little bit more about the Cultural Landscape Foundation. These are the 4 categories we're going to talk about today in this presentation. Here's their website. Again, highly encourage you, if you're interested in this topic, to check it out. If you go to the Places tab, excuse me, you'll find this search function, and you can search by any of these filters or all of them. It's really fun to poke around here. They have 2,700 sites, 1,400 biographies of landscape designers and landscape architects, and 14,000 images. So I did plug in Napa to see what would pop up, and there's only 2 entries and they're not populated yet, so we have some work to do on that. But if you're traveling or have other interests, this is a great resource. Okay, so getting back to Napa, as we think about Napa Valley, we're in a very unique environment. We have, our foundation is agriculture, and yet our agriculture produces a luxury lifestyle product. So the confluence of those 2 things, and being in a Mediterranean climate and having very unique topography, has provided us an abundance of beautiful designed landscape environments, because we have resorts, we have wineries, we have wine tasting rooms, we have restaurants, many different venues that have invested in beautiful outdoor spaces. When you think about Napa lifestyle, you think a lot about indoor, outdoor living. So I have a couple slides on each of these 4 cultural landscape definitions. And so we'll start with designed. Designed, again, the definition, consciously designed or laid out by a landscape architect, master gardener, architect, or horticulturist according to design principles, or by an amateur gardener working in a recognized style or tradition. On this slide, I'm showing 2 extremes of the design spectrum. When we think about landscape design, we're thinking about hardscape and softscape. They are both components of a complete landscape design. So on the left, we have Paloma, where there's no softscape design to this. It's a hardscape patio with a beautiful moongate sculptural art piece that is framing the landscape beyond, and the landscape beyond is vernacular. That's the vineyards and the vista and the fog and the mountains. So it's what we call borrowing the landscape. There is no landscape in the forefront or in the designed space that we're looking at, but it has borrowed the landscape beyond to bring that landscape into the space that's being used. And then on the right, we have Domaine Carneros, which is a very old European formal architecture complemented by old European formal landscape design. So pretty big contrast between the 2 images. Similar to the previous slide, we have 2 contrasting design approaches here. On the left, at Quintessa, we have the same approach of borrowing the landscape, but the architect has successfully used the building itself to frame the vista beyond. So, I mean, it is literally a frame, bringing in, accentuating this oak branch in the foreground, really making this 3-dimensional experience with the water and the vineyard beyond, bringing all of this landscape into this living space. Very beautifully done. And then on the right, we have Newton, also old European style, highly manipulated, very heavy human hand, obviously. Even the cypress trees are all topped at the same height. And we have the curlicue topiaries and the very geometric parterre formal garden. And last, on the designed landscapes, two different scales. On the left, we have a small scale, very intimate seating area, gravel path, olive trees, again, framing the view, light hand with the planting and a few boulders. So very kind of rustic, small scale, intimate experience. And then on the right, we have Hall, which is a modern take on European formality, in my opinion. We have these alleys of trees flanking the great lawn space here for events. Very geometric, simple geometry. We have the historic barn back here, flanked by a new modern building, same color tones, similar feeling of materials. We have a modern water feature and a band of planting. So it's a very modern geometric design, but based on traditional European formality. Okay, so ethnographic landscapes. This is a little fuzzier category. It's defined as landscapes containing a variety of natural and cultural resources that associated peoples define as heritage resources. So I interpret that to be, as people who live in Napa, what are the natural resources that we identify with as being unique to where we live? So we have Old Faithful on the left, unique to Calistoga. We have the wetlands that, for me, really are symbolic of the entry into the valley. And we recreate alongside of it, and we're very connected to those wetlands. And then, of course, the Napa River itself is the heart of Napa, back to our indigenous ancestors who were here long before us. And our modern day version of living in harmony with the river is our flood control project, but that allows the river to be a living river. So we gather next to it. It runs through the heart of our city. We recreate on it. It's very much part of living in Napa. Okay, historic sites. I'm sure all of you are familiar with our historic wineries, and so I'm going to showcase a few of them here and talk about it in terms of landscape. So like architectural historic resources, historic landscape resources are historic because they're of their association with an event, activity, or person. Here we have Beringer and Inglenook, two different scales, both very grand, lovely architecture. As we're looking at the landscape, we want to take a look at the hardscape and the softscape. So for hardscape, we're looking at the material selection, circulation, how people move through the entire site, what happens from the time you get on the entry drive, get out of your car, and approach the main entry of where you're supposed to be. All of those hardscape materials and planting decisions contribute to what your experience is. And historically, just as now, successful landscape design complements and enhances the architecture. And they really should go hand in hand. The most successful projects are the ones where the landscape architect and the architect are collaborating early on. It really makes a huge difference. And our job is to make what the architect has created even better, right? So here we have Beringer. We have a small scale water feature compared to Inglenook. Warm color tones in the hardscape to complement the building materials. Even the difference between the flagstone on the walkways and around the fountain that are have tight joints compared to the flagstone here with the gaps, which is a more garden-esque kind of experience. Those were all conscious decisions made to provide a different feeling and effect as you travel through the space. This planting, layered lower foundation planting to soften the building but not obstruct the windows. And then trees, to frame the building on either side. Inglenook is a much larger scale, grander experience. Just the width of this walkway and the width of the walks around this large water feature with benches for viewing. I mean, it just denotes a much grander experience, intended for a lot more people. Great lawn here. And then, of course, the vines on the building, very romantic old European feel, and the large trees. And the building itself is much larger, so it's all in scale and proportional. Here we have Krug and Farniente. Krug, a little more European feeling, and the Italian cypress acting as exclamation points, framing the doors. And then the large trees framing both sides, very dramatic. And then Farniente has a little more softer agrarian feel with the olive trees. The building itself is a little softer materials with this beautiful sculptural shade tree over the picnic area, lawn, and just a softer feel overall, and then this man-made lake. So interesting. Most of them do incorporate some kind of water feature. But the buildings are magnificent, but if you can imagine them without the landscape, it's just not as rich. So here's a case study I thought it would be fun to share of a historic site we worked on. This was a 2019 to 2021 project for us. This is the McClellan Priest House on the corner of Randolph and Franklin. It was built in 1879, and it's on the National Registry. When we work on historic properties, we try to do as much research as we can to find old photographs or any record of what was there at the time it was built. These were photos that we found at the Historical Society. Black and white is 1977. And then this one, I think, might be a few years after that based on the growth of this tree. So we were engaged in 2019. The owner underwent a major restoration and renovation on the main building. This is what it looked like in 2019. It needed a lot of TLC, and it needed to be brought up to current just infrastructure, utilities, and code and accessibility and all that kind of stuff. It functions as a bed and breakfast. The owner also bought the property directly to the south for the manager to live in. So the intent at the time was to demolish everything between the two buildings and open that up to create a patio space for events and for the B&B use. So when we got to work, we set about evaluating everything that was there at the time. We had a lot of meetings about the boxwoods and about this red brick. We engaged an arborist to evaluate all of the trees. It was decided most of the trees were able to be kept. A couple were in such poor health that they had to be removed. You will see, I'll walk you through our hardscape solution and our softscape solution, but we did decide when we got into demo that the bricks were not salvageable, but we wanted to be as true to the historic nature of this property as possible. So we came up with these solutions. We incorporated new brick as accent pieces, not as the primary hardscape material, primarily for accessibility, but also just ease of maintenance. We worked very closely with the architect and the interior designer on the color palette and material selection for the outside items. So we found this new brick that had a little bit of darker tones to match the burgundy trim that was in the new exterior color palette. And we complemented that with a colored concrete. This now is the entrance, and I believe they were still working on this medallion. I don't know if that's been done yet or not. We created connecting paths to the manager's house and to the new patio between the two properties and added lighting for safety. And then this is the new outdoor patio. We added accent bands with the new brick to create some interest, but also elongate the space and make it feel a little bigger. And then up here on the main house, they added this breakfast terrace next to the kitchen and the dining room. And again, we worked with the interior designer to find a material, flooring material that could work inside, outside. So that transition is seamless. And for the softscape, we were able to keep the same footprint for the lawn. And the reason that was possible is because it's on, this property is on the historic National Registry. There is an exception for that in the California State Water Conservation Ordinance. So we were able to keep the same lawn layout. We did not have to meet the water use budget that we would normally have to meet. So that gave us a little bit more freedom. We ended up replacing the boxwoods. We recommended that they do that at the same time with all the other new plantings so that everything matures at the same time. And that the old boxwood was going to fail eventually. It was just a question of when. So it was more cost effective to do this all at the same time while they had the crews here putting in all new irrigation and everything else that goes along with that. And then as far as the planting palette, we wanted to stay true to the Victorian garden-esque garden style, but with new California plant palette. So we wanted the look to feel respectful of the historic qualities of the property, but also contemporary with 2020 when it was all going in. And I think it was a successful outcome. Normally, we would not do a plant palette that was this high maintenance, but because this is a B&B getting regular maintenance and skilled maintenance, we felt comfortable doing this design. So feel free to take a walk and check it out if you're in the neighborhood. Our last category is vernacular landscapes. These are landscapes that have evolved or changed through people's activities or occupancy. To me, the vineyards all throughout our valley are a perfect example of that. They're such an incredible, beautiful landscape cultural resource, and they've just evolved over time, but they are very rich and of great value. And not just because of the grapes that they produce. And then, of course, the Napa fieldstone walls that have just organically evolved throughout the valley. Things like the tree tunnels, the tree lined driveways and entry drives that are all throughout the valley. Some of them started as windbreaks. Some are just for, meant for beauty, but they are a valuable resource. And then the Bale Grist Mill is really a beautiful historic resource, but it also has these lovely trails and wood railings and that have evolved just through human use over time. So to recap, we talked about the Landscape Cultural Foundation as a great resource to check out and learn more about these 4 categories. We covered some of these. I know there are many, many more that I have not been able to capture. And, it's a very subjective thing. What some of them anyway, vernacular and ethnographic, there's a lot of overlap. Here is my contact information. If anybody is interested in or has more questions, they want to follow up separately outside of this. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Susan. You can go ahead and stop screen share if you want.
All right.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, you can use the Q&A box or the webinar chat, and I will ask Susan some of those. But I have prepared, of course, for you, Susan, a couple of questions
All
myself.
right.
I thought that was a great presentation, and I learned a lot about how the Napa landscapes are divided into these categories. And I'm good friends with Charles Birnbaum at the Cultural
Okay.
Landscape Foundation. And oh, Tom says thank you for our webinar. And he's done such important work over the years. Where do you see Napa, like this idea of the Napa landscape going forward? Are we sort of in a pattern right now, or do we have something new coming up?
I'm not sure we have anything new coming up. I mean, I will say, I think the Firewise component is going to play a big role in how the valley moves forward, especially out in the county properties. Not so much, in the heart of the valley, but as you get out into more remote properties, how people think about landscape, similar to how we had to change our mindset around drought tolerant landscape and getting away from lawn in everybody's front yard and what we consider beautiful. And I think people are becoming more accepting of California natives and understanding their value. So I think there'll be a little different mindset around firewise and defensible space planting.
And there was a new, I guess, regulations or a new kind of map that came out recently. Wasn't that true about like which areas are more fire danger and others? Is that what guides fire hardening efforts, or is it more personally motivated by owners?
Well, it's a combination of factors that are coming into play, primarily insurance companies, excuse me, and the state fire marshal and CAL FIRE. I mean, those are the big deciders. There is a new law. There's been, I think you and I chatted about this, but there's a lot more buzz about it. It's called the Zone Zero law. This was put into place by the Board of Forestry back in 2020, but it hasn't been implemented yet. However, Governor Newsom has signed an executive order stating that this needs to be implemented by the end of this year. And that applies to properties that are out in, they call them state responsibility areas. So it's anything that CAL FIRE covers. So if you're under city fire protection, this doesn't apply to you right now. But that is zone zero is the zone from your building 5 feet out. And it basically means there can't be anything combustible in that zone zero. That right now applies to new construction, but it will apply to all properties after 3 years.
Yeah, and I know that construction is different now too, the way that a building is created.
Yeah.
The building itself is also fire hardened.
Yes.
New
Correct.
construction.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay, so I have a question from Lucy about climate change, and how do you see climate change affecting the way that people are landscaping, or maybe any regulatory for Napa Valley as a whole?
Right. Well, that ties directly to the defensible space. So if you are in the county or in CAL FIRE areas, I encourage you to go on to the Napa. I think it's, I don't have the website handy, but if you Google Napa Firewise, you'll get all the guidelines and standards and the zones and things like that. So I think people are becoming more aware of how critical that is for protecting your home. Also, of course, the drought and the water use just continues to be an ongoing issue, and it's not ever going to go back to the way it was. So I mean, I think people have really come around to not wanting, just the cost. Forget about, what is the right thing to do or not. Most people can't afford to water grass or, high water use plants. So that's changing. Yeah, it's all having an impact for
And
sure.
I was out on a vineyard once and I was walking around the vineyard. It's where Frogsley gets their grapes over in St. Helena. I couldn't believe how hard the ground was. And they're like, yeah, we don't water the grapes all summer.
Yeah.
So I'm learning a lot about Napa's landscape heritage. And Diane Dillon had mentioned to me a couple times about the agricultural preserve and
Hmm.
how important that's been. And can you explain agricultural preserve a little bit?
Sure. So I think that was in the 70s. I don't remember the exact date, but so the heart of Napa Valley, it falls in the agricultural preserve, and that basically means there's no development allowed. It's been challenged and threatened several times throughout history, but it's maintained its integrity. So the good news is that protects our agricultural industry and who we are, right? And we all, I think, benefit from all of that green space. Um, the challenge to that is housing, as we all know. And so, I mean, everything's intertwined and
Right.
interconnected. So, but that's why we are getting, and I believe rightfully so, higher density projects, housing projects in infill properties in Napa.
Right.
And that's where they belong. And so something's got to give, though. If we have to produce a certain amount of housing, the only way to go is up. And
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not advocating for high rises or anything, but we are going to have to change our mindset about density, what kind of housing we're going to provide for people going
Right.
forward. Yeah.
It feels like we're in a growth period with a couple of big projects coming to downtown Napa. But if people are on this webinar and have not been to Napa Valley, I would encourage you to come. I've lived here for a couple of years, and the landscape views of the valley are just incredible.
Hmm.
And when you were showing pictures of Behringer and Domaine Carnero, so Behringer is very Germanic. I feel very Germanic
Hmm.
in architecture, and then Domaine is very French. Do you feel
Hmm.
like the landscapes reflect those kind of
Yeah,
origins as
I
well?
do. Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, I with the note that we're still in California, so I
Right.
mean, the plants around Behringer are very much Napa Valley to my mind, but
Mhm.
definitely different than Domaine Carneros, you know. Uh, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think because our climate is very much like some Italian climates, right? I believe
Hmm.
that people think it's going to be all Italianate sort of,
Right.
landscaping in it. I think there's a lot of modernist landscapes here that are
Yeah.
very interesting. One of the things too about Napa, like some other places, is things exist, but you can't see them from the road. So I think in
Yeah.
Napa, it's so important to be an explorer.
Hmm.
Right. So I was going to ask you, what are a few of your favorite personal places to maybe go and walk on a sunny day or someplace that you would want to visit?
Oh gosh. That is hard to say because there's so many different styles and you know, not to sound like an old person, but back in the day, nobody charged for tastings and, everything was accessible and not by appointment only, and everything now is by appointment only. So the wineries are a little challenging, but I like, well, and then not designed, but if you have not hiked Mount St. Helena and
Oh,
gotten,
I haven't yet.
oh, that is really fun. And if you get to the top, the view is amazing,
Oh, I
really
bet.
amazing. Yeah. Um, I mean, some of my best experiences have been at Farniente, Schramsberg, uh, even, and it's not my favorite style, but it's really interesting, Clos Pegase.
Hmm.
Some of the older wineries that sometimes get overlooked now because there's so many new things to
Hmm.
see. Amazetta up in St. Helena has a beautiful tasting patio
Oh, okay.
with amazing views. They've done a really nice like hardscape design. It's interesting. Um,
You can walk around Inglenook without an appointment, I think,
okay,
right?
there you go.
And then
Yeah.
Raymond has a very interesting free public walking tour, self-guided around their gardens. And you can
Okay.
see,
Yeah.
cows and chickens and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it was some sculpture, so that's kind of fun. But
Yeah.
it is a little bit more challenging. Bill Mill is a place I think everybody should visit because not only is that landscape so interesting, but also the building itself. They
Right.
still produce flour. So if you're a visitor,
Yeah, I know that is
you can
neat.
go up there and go in the building. The whole building is shaking, and then the flour comes out the chute, and you can buy the flour in the gift shop, and then go home and make some cookies, which I think is a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Um,
Yeah.
all right. Well, let me just get one or two more questions. Were there any unexpected discoveries in your work? Because you're out there in the landscape and you're digging in. There is anything unexpected shown up? Any surprises? Anything fun?
Mm.
Any archaeology? So you have to be aware of
Oh,
archaeology, right?
yes. Yes. I guess, I mean, I'm sure it's public knowledge now, but the hotel, this was years ago. Can't remember what year, but that hotel on Soskull that is now called the Knoll or something. It
Right.
used to
Mhm.
be called Cambria. Yeah, so I worked on that with my old employer many years ago, and that they did find human remains along the
Oh,
riverbank
wow.
there. So there was a lot of mitigation that had to happen. Everything stopped.
Hmm.
A lot of design work that had to work around that. So that was challenging. And
There's a little stream right there, right?
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
little creek.
Hmm. So the Napa River, I noticed, is getting more attention, and a lot of, I mean, the landscaping around the landscape design around the river is just incredible at this point. Where to the flood control,
Yes.
which took many, many years, and I know that there's more work getting that revived, the river.
Mhm.
Do you have any visions of what could happen there around
Well,
the
I'm
river?
really excited to if you have not plugged into the Riverline
Oh, right.
project, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm very excited to see what they're doing with that. There's so much potential, and if even one of those concepts were to go into effect and
Hmm.
actually get built, that would be amazing.
Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Well, I don't see any more questions at the moment, but so I wanted to thank you, Susan, for joining us today. It was a lot of fun. And
Thank
just a
you.
reminder to everybody, we'll have all of this available on our YouTube. And please visit napacountylandmarks.org and get on our email list so you'll get advance notice of any tours we have coming up. And we do have some new programs that people can participate in, including the Legacy Business Program, which is recognizing businesses that are over 20 years old in Napa. We're working with the City of Napa Economic Development Department on that. And also a project that we call 50 Flagship Structures, which Susan, I have to get your advice on landscapes in there because it's really just identifying 50 character defining places
Mm,
in Napa that
okay.
tell us what, architecturally what the county is all about. So it's from vernacular to high style, but just to give it people a snapshot, as if you
Thanks.
could do that for Napa. So because there's so much here. But anyway, Susan, thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you again soon. And thank you everybody for joining us on this webinar.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
All right,
bye.
bye.